So here we are finding ourselves at Denise Richards, season 1, episode 7. The finale is next week. I thought this was the finale and Charlie Sheen was it, but no, guys, guess who the finale is? Garcelle Beauvais. And I have a sneaky suspicion that when she quit the show, they might have reorganized the episodes a little bit, because I have a feeling that Charlie Sheen was the original finale and now Garcelle is, because of the fan sort of interest in her at the moment, because she left Real Housewives of Beverly Hills unexpected after the reunion. So I have a lot to tell you about Charlie Sheen that you probably don't know, but before I do, I want to start off this show and draw you in case you didn't see Denise Richards' episode 7 last night, and I want to first play you a little clip.
I think.
Yeah.
Coming back here?
Oh.
Having worked here?
It's so nostalgic for me. I was so young when I worked here. I was 17.
I have that picture. Where was that coming from that day? Do you remember?
No, but I remember that the staff here, nobody knew that you were my dad.
Oh, they didn't?
And when we took a photo, they thought I was a fan.
Did you keep it a secret out of shame or just out of to protect me?
I kept it a secret because I didn't want people to treat me differently.
Wow.
How funny is that? He's like,
Shame.
Can you believe Charlie Sheen's here? I was like, no.
That's pretty good.
My relationship with my dad has definitely improved. So we started getting pedicures together like every 2 or 3 weeks, and that's like our favorite thing to do together.
Would you ever think that Charlie Sheen gets pedicures? Or maybe you would?
He used to get, it was pink with sparkles on top or something like that.
That was cute.
Now I'm going to tell you the ugly side of Charlie Sheen. This is a very produced moment that we're seeing with Charlie Sheen. If you know all his scandals, you know that it's not as sparkly pink as this has been made out to be. So this is a long one because I'm going to tell you all the tea on Charlie. I've been waiting for this.
Oh,
I've never been on a reality show.
The Housewives wanted you on.
I never saw the show until about 3 days ago, and I stumble into this fight that you're in with Lisa.
You sent a cease and desist. You wanted the footage taken out. Who told you that? Oh, you're so angry.
No,
You are playing dirty. I'm playing dirty?
But I didn't have the backstory, so I couldn't really pick a side. I mean, I picked yours, 'cause, you know, for obvious reasons. But
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
nice.
think,
You did that.
our lunch is going to look nothing like that.
So we open up the episode and we find out that Denise Richards had a whirlwind romance with Charlie Sheen. She went on one date with him at his Westwood apartment and they stayed in. She had like boiled vegetables because she was obviously strict on her diet back then. And Charlie Sheen had whatever he had. Allegedly, he was sober at the time, which I did not know. That was unusual, shocking to me, to be honest. And he was out in Beverly Hills a lot, and the rumor was that he was dating lots of strippers and he was partying his ass off. So when I heard that he was allegedly sober during Denise Richards' courtship and then most of her marriage, I was kind of surprised by that. But we'll get into that later. What I wanted to tell you was that Charlie Sheen and her go on this date at his house and he wants to watch a game, which I think is baseball. And I wanted to use that opportunity to tell you that in high school, Charlie Sheen was trying to go pro in baseball. And what screwed that up for him, sadly, was that he got into a lot of trouble his junior and senior year because he threw the Beverly Hills Hotel garbage cans and looked for credit cards and people's information to do identity theft, and then with a bunch of friends ended up robbing those rich people's credit cards and using it to buy electronics and things like that he wanted with his friends. He also got arrested for smoking pot because he passed out in a car and they found his stash on him, and a whole bunch of different really bad things when he was younger. Now, the reason Charlie Sheen did this, tying it, I'll get back to the baseball game that he's watching with Denise in a minute, was because his dad was a raging alcoholic and actually had a breakdown at a certain point after he did Apocalypse Now. There's Martin Sheen in a scene in the movie, which was a very dark film, and he said it pushed him to the edge. He had like a breakdown on the movie. He actually was using drugs and alcohol in the film, and so I guess that's method acting. And in one scene, he's actually so drunk that he is supposed to hit a wall, but instead he hits a mirror. He slices his hand open, and then he doesn't stop because he's hammered in the scene. He rolls over the bed, and at the end, he's got blood all over his hand, and it's real, and he rubs it all over his face. But he was really drunk in the scene, and it was like a very crazy scene, but probably why the film did so well, because it was pretty real. Sadly, Martin has a complete breakdown and his drinking gets out of the control. He has a heart attack and this sobers him up, okay? But before Apocalypse Now, he was a raging drinker and partier. And he was abusive to both Emilio Estevez and Charlei Sheen. Emilio more than Charlie because he was older. But Emilio talked many times about how awful it was to be around his dad when he was young. So not only did Charlie Sheen get the genetics, but obviously the abuse toll made him want to be self-destructive. Anyway, back to Denise Richards on this date with Charlie Sheen. They really hit it off. And she's super excited because now she's going to be like Hollywood royalty, which the Sheens are. So their whole family at this time in particular was like AAA. So she's like, woo woo. And she ends up getting a call from Armani, who wants to do her wedding dress. And he's offered his house in Italy for them to get married in. And they go. And actually, we find this out. People don't know this. He and I, meaning Charlie and Denise, had a Catholic ceremony. We had to do the pre-cana classes. I don't know how we passed to even fucking get married, if you ask me, but we did. This was the wedding dress designed by Armani. It was very simple and elegant and obviously conservative, given that we now know it was a Catholic wedding. And so they get married on that day, and it's a stark contrast to her later wedding to Aaron, her future husband. Here's the hot little number that Denise sported for her marriage to Aaron. It was very casual. She had a short dress under that long kind of cover skirt. And so when she took that off, it was kind of like a hip dress, like you'd go to a nightclub in. And Aaron is obviously super casual. So you can tell a totally different vibe from the first wedding. So the date goes well with Charlie. They watch the show, and 9 months later, they're married. And this was a huge coup because Charlie was having sex with pretty much every escort in the Beverly Hills, Hollywood area, especially porn stars. So for Denise to land him at this point was shocking. So this brings us to the next scene, which is that Aaron and Denise are at Boulevard celebrating their anniversary. They've been married for 6 years, and they've been together for 8, and they talk about how quick time has gone by, but that they've aged gracefully. And then we hear a funny story about how Denise Richards met Aaron and the way that went down as she was a client at his clinic, and she noticed that he had a big you-know-what through his pants, and that made her want to have sex with Aaron, so she hit on him as a client going to his clinic, and then they ended up having sex, but he was like a good dad. She could see that in him, and instead of it becoming a fling, which is what she thought it was originally going to be, it became more serious, and her and Aaron started dating. Now, this is her story on the show. I'm not sure it really went down like that, just saying. It's at this moment in the show that we find out that Sammy Sheen is not speaking to her father, which was shocking because if you remember, Sammy Sheen wanted to drop out of high school and Denise Richards didn't want her to. And so Sammy decided that she was going to go live with her dad and not Denise Richards and live by his rules, which Denise was like, there aren't any. Okay. And so Charlie Sheen said, I love my daughter unconditionally, and GED, here we come, and can't wait to have her there. Well, soon after that happened, she moves out and gets her own apartment, and I think they must have had a big brawl because she's not speaking to her dad anymore, and she didn't want to even go to lunch with him when Denise Richards and Lola go in this episode. So Sammy had some big fallout with her dad. It turns out that Charlie Sheen and Denise Richards made Sammy Sheen during Scary Movie 5. That's always good. Now, one of the reasons that people think they fought was that she wanted to join OnlyFans, and Charlie didn't like the idea of her taking off her clothes for money. Now, that's interesting given his choice of women and how much he just loves them. And so I was surprised to see this double standard for his daughter. But it was there. She ended up leaving, doing OnlyFans, getting her own apartment, and Charlie Sheen said after he saw the money she was making that maybe he should reconsider his opinion on that, and that, he should have just said that it was okay. And it seems like it's a good thing for her, not a bad thing. Although that's not what she says on the show. Sammy has struggled over many years to have a good relationship with her father. It always goes Pete-tong, and it's got to be hard knowing how much gossip is out there about Charlie Sheen and how mean he was to Denise Richards publicly, because he trolled her. You might remember this. Back in 2018, Charlie Sheen's assistant dies of an overdose. Lenny Dykstra, the baseball player, blames Charlie Sheen for being like asleep at the wheel when it came to his assistant and essentially helping her to die with drugs. And he writes this whole thing where he says the reason that Charlie Sheen is a drug and alcohol addict is because of the fact that he's bisexual, and he felt like he couldn't come out as bisexual in Hollywood because Hollywood wouldn't accept him, and therefore that frustration was what led to him to turn to drugs and alcohol as a release and potentially prostitutes. Now, something you may not know is that Charlie Sheen lost his virginity to a prostitute, a girl, when he was 15 years old, and he started doing drugs when he was 11. This is what Dykstra said specifically about Charlie Sheen's issue with being bisexual. Hence, Charlie's problem is not one of public acceptance of his sexual orientation, but rather Charlie's inability to accept his sexuality. He wrote, "The damning letter comes a day after Dykstra accused Sheen of being complicit in the death of Robin Calamaro, Sheen's former assistant, who died of a drug overdose in 2012. In 2020, Corey Feldman drops a documentary which was groundbreaking, and in it he says the reason that Corey Haim became so addicted to drugs and alcohol was due to his encounters with Hollywood predators, which included Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen allegedly R-worded Corey Haim between trailers on the movie that they did together called Lucas. This was what is a kind of synopsis of these claims. Now, you may not know this, but I used to do sponsorship for Corey Feldman, and I worked really closely with his manager, Scott. Scott and I are still friends today, Scott Carlson, and he was the one who got me the casting for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in season 2. Because believe it or not, the casting agents didn't know that I'd already appeared in season 1. That's how disorganized they are. All right, the documentary explores the friendship between Haim and Feldman and asserts that both were sexually abused as children in the industry. Feldman names actor Charlie Sheen, registered sex offender Marty Weiss, convicted child molester John Grissom, and Alfie Hoffman as abusers that sexually assaulted him and Haim. Feldman asserts that Sheen raped Haim during the filming of the 1986 film Lucas. Haim was 13 years of age during the film of Lucas, while Sheen was 19. If you're in the Patreon or interested in this topic, search Scott Carlson, and the episode of Dishing Drama Dana will come out that I did with him about all the details of this. Thank goodness Lola's close with Charlie Sheen, because that's who Denise Richards goes to lunch with for Charlie to attend. And they have a nice meal, and we find out that, Charlie is sober. He's just gotten plastic surgery on his face and neck. It doesn't look great. I mentioned that on last week's recap and took you through that towards the end. And Denise Richards seems like she's making fun of his face and neck a little bit, but whatever. He'll learn that now the hard way. We found out some other tea about the breakup of Charlie Sheen and Denise Richards at the end after she left him and moved to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Charlie's lawyer got them couple counseling, and they went a few times, and the couple counseling woman just felt like Charlie and Denise together was not going to happen, so she quit. And she told Denise Richards that if you want to stay with Charlie Sheen, you're going to need counseling for the rest of your life. Charlie Sheen really did try to keep the family together, but he was so dysfunctional and so insane in the way he spoke and everything. It was just impossible for Denise, and so she had to go. So then Brad Pitt comes up with Lola. We find out that she was friends with the Pitt-Jolie kids and went over to their house for a play date sleepover, and Brad Pitt was there cooking breakfast because he was the dad. This was obviously better times. He's now completely estranged from the whole family, and they are alleging he's got a drinking problem and is abusive when he drinks, which is sad, very sad. I hope that, he's figuring that out, because I'm a Brad Pitt fan. Back when he was really young, he was at one point or another sharing an apartment in Laurel Canyon. It was one of the houses with a bunch of other actor guys. And I actually was dating one of the actor guys he was living with. I don't know if he was a formal roommate, but I know he was in the house, and I was like, wow, He wasn't famous yet, but he was good looking. He's a pretty boy, very pretty. So we find out that Lola Sheen hasn't really had a real boyfriend where she goes to dinner with him or anything. And that's because she's afraid that men or boys will date her because she's Charlie Sheen's daughter and not for her. Because every time she brings up or people find out that Charlie Sheen's her dad, they kind of fangirl her over her father. And so she never really knows who wants to know her for her or who wants to know her for Charlie Sheen because they're huge fans of her dad. And I'm sure that also happens with her mom, Denise Richards. And she tells about a story that like a boy said he liked her and she liked him. And then she went to his house with some friends and there was like a big old poster of Charlie Sheen on his wall, and she just didn't know, like, was he interested in her really or more about integrating himself in proximity of her celebrity family. It's a really sad thing, but I think that probably happens to a lot of famous kids. Very tough to navigate. All in all, Charlie Sheen is a little weird and he's become a germaphobe and he's changed so much from when he was like a cool, hot actor that it's kind of hard to digest. Now, Charlie is working on a project where he is going to be doing a fictional show about being on a reality show as Charlie Sheen. And they're trying to sell it right now. And there's a bunch of celebrities involved in that project. So I think his idea of appearing on the show this time, going on reality TV with Denise, was also about promoting that project down the line. Up until Platoon, Charlie Sheen is partying pretty normally, okay? But then on Platoon, he starts becoming an alcoholic and he's drinking all the time. And in fact, the 2 movies he does with Oliver Stone are huge successes. But Charlie Sheen is drunk in almost all the scenes, just like his dad did, Martin Sheen. This is Charlie's brother, Emilio Estevez. A lot of people don't know Martin Sheen is Puerto Rican, totally Puerto Rican, because he changed his name because he felt that Hollywood was racist to Hispanics. And he was right because he didn't get a big movie until he changed his name, sadly. Anyway, this is Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen's older brother, who was part of the 80s Brat Pack. And that was like all the hottest actors at the time. And Emilio, I had a massive crush on, okay? So he was like epic. And Charlie Sheen was jealous of his brother. And that was one of the things that I think also ate at Charlie's soul, along with everything else. Denise Richards says that the time that she was with Charlie Sheen and they were together, he was sober. And that's why it worked. But as soon as he started doing drugs, it was really awful. He was like the devil and everything changed. This is not the first girl to say that. Charlie had a kid at 19 and with a girl, and that ended up falling apart. And then Kelly Preston and him were together, and he, everybody thought he tried to shoot her, but it wasn't that. A gun that he owned fell to the ground and accidentally shot the toilet shrapnel hit her leg. And so anyway, but Kelly said he was beautiful and great to her until he started doing drugs. Charlie had loads of wives. I mean, he is just a busy, busy man and never lasts long because he always gets claustrophobic and jumps ship. His preference is prostitutes and always will be. And whether he's sober or not, I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was one of the biggest clients for Heidi Fleiss, who was Hollywood and Beverly Hills' main madam. So I think he spent $300,000 to $400,000 with Heidi Fleiss, mostly in cash. He did about $52,000, I think, through checks with her. And he used to get a lot of his prostitutes out of Agora Hills in the Valley because those girls were, also in porn. So Heidi was busy with Charlie. He ended up testifying in her case. And the reason that Charlie didn't go to jail, because it was a criminal case that Heidi Fleiss was found guilty of being this massive madam in Beverly Hills in LA, which you weren't allowed to do. It was illegal there. The reason Charlie didn't go to jail was he flipped on a bunch of guys that he knew used Heidi, and he turned them in return for getting out of it. And then he also agreed to do the trial and testify, which is why the prosecution let him out of it. Charlie Sheen is a great actor, but he's also a professional liar. He's pretended to do a million things. Like sometimes when he used to walk around with like coffee cups, it had booze in it when he was supposed to be sober. When he was at rehab at one point or another, he went and took off for 2 days and hosted a bikini contest with Nicolas Cage. In addition to that, Charlie Sheen was known to, beat up women when he was drunk, and he was supposed to go to prison. He got criminal charges brought against him that he was found guilty for beating up one of his girlfriends, gave her a fat lip, knocked her out, said if she told anyone that he would kill her. So this was what Charlie Sheen was like high. At one point, he allegedly had a stroke, put that in air quotes. It was really a cocaine overdose. He tried to inject cocaine into his bloodstream to get the high on a little quicker. Denise Richards meets Charlie Sheen at the height of his game. He's gotten 2.5 men. He's won awards. He's, I guess, sober during this period of time. We don't know really, but he is, I guess. And so things are like amazing for him. He meets Denise on a film and they end up like, you know the rest, okay? But this is like, you need to know that Charlie Sheen is a real catch at this time. Now, what was difficult for me to watch is that Denise Richards once went public that she knew that Charlie Sheen was into underage boys and would pleasure himself to watching these types of videos, which became very disturbing to her. And this was the main reason that she wanted to end the marriage. I'm sure there was a lot more to it, but the fact that he was interested in young boys was very disturbing to her. Now, none of this comes up, and in fact, there's a conversation about Denise Richards protecting Charlie Sheen, and he's like, good, it's good that you did that, because if not, we wouldn't even be friends. And we sort of see the real dynamic between the two of them, quid pro quo. Now, he also supposedly was watching little girl porn, too, which disturbed Denise Richards, given that she has 2 daughters, and like, where does that line end? The FBI was involved, but they just didn't do anything. But that could just be that Charlie Sheen's a huge actor. We don't know what he turned into them. He said he sent his computers, but who knows? Anyway, at the end of it all sort of went away. Yet again, another scandal. Now, Brooke Mueller also has her group of allegations against Charlie Sheen. Those included that she had a sex tape of him with a man that she was going to release. And he said, well, if you do that, I'm going to release pictures of you smoking crack. Now, we know that she did smoke crack, and that was real. So I have to imagine so was the video that was Charlie Sheen having gay sex that Brooke somehow got her hands on. Brooke Mueller was also assaulted by Charlie Sheen, and he had to do a punishment over that in the courts too. He also threatened to cut Brooke's head off and send it in a box to her mother. Needless to say, there's a million of these antics. It's pretty clear that not only does Charlie Sheen have drug and alcohol problems on and off and is a pathological liar and a million other problems, but in addition to that, he might be suffering from some mental issue that he has because he has manias, it would appear. And the manias make him do awful things in public when he's not high and say terrible things. And he loses connection with reality, like, becomes delusional and has like a psychotic episode. So this is also something that's haunted him that, he goes through. So this is what destroys his career, and he gets fired off 2.5 Men, and Warner cuts him off contract-wise, and he's been doing his best to survive ever since, but not, the way he blows money, forget it. But needless to say, he's definitely gotten sober. Now, something you should know is that when you have a bipolar disorder, which it's possible Charlie Sheen has, if you take drugs and alcohol because you're addicted to them, it actually will start off a mania. And the mania can last for days, sometimes weeks. And it's triggered by the drug use, but then you come off the drugs and you stay in a psychotic episode where people are like, wait a minute, he's not high anymore and he's still talking like a lunatic and being aggressive and scary. And he's sober. Well, he is, but he's had a psychotic break. So we end Denise Richards' episode with her summing up the lunch is lovely and Charlie kind of doing the same thing, saying that, he cares about both the daughter and Denise. And it's like on an upbeat, happy note, although very, odd at times, the way they communicate. And we see that ending, but it was really hard for me to take it seriously based on what I've shared with you in this video, which is why I wanted to take my time on this one. I hope you enjoyed today's show. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, these used to be known by people on the ground in LA and Hollywood, but the fact that it all became mainstream over the years is just like, wow. And Denise Richards has to deal with this forever. You know, he's always been integrated into her existence in some way or another, which has got to be draining. Like and subscribe. We'll talk soon.